Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Michelle Evans, who is the Retail, Digital and Consumer Insights Director and Global Lead at Euromonitor International. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Simon.
How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for the invite.
Good. No, appreciate your time and thanks for coming on. So we're going to talk today around digital shopper trends, which is based on your recent 2023 webinar. That's not a British accent I detect either. So where are you based?
I'm based in Chicago.
Nice. And the weather today is very cold or very warm?
This week it's been flirting with spring. We'll say that, but yeah, a little in and out there.
So warmer than the UK. So as at the time of recording, we're predicted snow and -5 or -6 this week. So yeah, that'll be a potential lockdown for us because we just can't deal with cold weather. But there you go. There you go. I'm sure you're far more equipped. Every time I've been to the States, far more equipped, certainly on the East Coast for cold weather.
Yeah, I say now is flip-flop season.
Yeah.
Once it hits like 50 degrees in Chicago.
Yeah, not for us. It's cold. It's cold. Wonder if you can get the car off the drive type weather, or soon to be. But enough weather chat. So Michelle, tell us a bit about yourself, what you've done, how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah, so I've been at Euromonitor 12 and a half years. I actually started in our payments research, but moved more into digital kind of driven trends probably a good 10 plus years ago. And then I was managing our new product around, we call it the digital consumer. So thinking about this digitally connected consumer for the last 7 years, I've been doing that. And then obviously that ties so much into retail that I started managing those insights as well a few years back.
Excellent. And retail digital transformation, big talking point. Certainly, we've seen a massive change, haven't we, since the COVID years and coming out of that. But now we've got kind of, unfortunately, a prolonged war. We've got global recession. We've got supply problems. So maybe pushing people onto that next level of thinking or a necessity to kind of move forward.
Yeah, there's no shortage of things to talk about in this space for sure.
Good. And we're going to focus specifically today on this 2023 Digital Shopper Trends webinar that you did, Euromonitor International. We'll put a link on the notes for the show so that people can click on it and watch that and come back to you with any questions or next steps. And that really focused on how digitally you're connecting shoppers, I think. And there was 5 key trends that you're going to talk us through.
Yeah. So the basis is we're thinking about these digital shoppers and how they're using that connection or other technologies to redefine commerce in the year ahead.
Brilliant. So 5 trends. Should we start with number 1?
Yeah. So number 1 is called online savers, and it ties into definitely some of what you just brought up in the conversation already, as it relates to this general economic uncertainty, inflation, cost of living, supply chain challenges, and the like. So Euromonitor does not project that the global economy will enter a recession this year. But obviously that threat does remain top of mind for consumers. And something that we're seeing this year or that we drew out as a trend is, unlike the 2008-09 recession, consumers or the population, you have 3 times as many consumers that are connected. So we have 5 billion digital consumers today. We had 1.6 in 2009. And the biggest thing is that means that there's more digital tools and platforms out there to help consumers with stretching their money. So it could range from utilizing platforms for secondhand shopping to joining neighbors online in online communities to place bulk orders, also known as community group buying. And then just in general, efforts to bring discounts more front and center on websites. So like Google's an example where at the end of 2022, they unveiled new shopping features to make it easier for consumers to locate deals on Google Shopping, as an example.
So have we become more savvy shoppers by default, or because we can access data and information and have it presented to us or surfaced more easily? Have we become more lazy shoppers? Or is it a combination of the two?
Are we savvy or lazy, basically? So I think it's what we're hypothesizing here is just because consumers are more savvy and online from that standpoint, because this channel is available to them. That means that there's websites and tools and platforms more widely available to a larger chunk of the population than there would have been, during the recession of 0809. So, something like secondhand shopping, obviously that existed 15 years ago, but there are platforms and websites that make it easier to do that today than there might have been even 5 years ago. So we've seen a noticeable jump in consumers turning to secondhand buying and selling, whether it is to buy, to rent, things like that. Now, some of these trends, nothing ever sits alone, right? They're
Yep.
often interrelated. And, secondhand buying is one that's also helped by the broader kind of sustainability push as well. So, there's been a sort of shift in mindset, I would say, where, consumers that might have turned away from this idea of buying secondhand, now have this social justification that they're doing good for the planet, even if the driver right now is to maybe cut costs.
Absolutely. And I think it throws up a couple of things in my mind. So, yeah, that whole, I suppose, repurposing, even seems to be a big push in the UK now on kind of renting clothes as well. So renting things, not doing it. We're certainly seeing lots of those, what I call them roundup apps. So it will round up all your purchases and put them in a saving pot. So at the end of the month, year, everything you buy for £1.99, it puts the penny in, or £2.50, it puts the 50p in. So you save by stealth almost. And also back to that kind of 0809 period, I think for me personally, I shop differently. So I will do that showrooming effect of going and look at the product, then searching online to say, well, I know that's the one I want, but I don't necessarily, I may like the brand I've gone to see it in, but if I know I can get it somewhere else cheaper, maybe delivered free, then that's the journey I'll take, or the path I'll take. And I think the big change probably that we've seen in UK retail is everybody has stopped price promising against the internet. So big heritage brands like John Lewis have dropped their never knowingly undersold on price promise, because they just can't keep up with the margins of e-commerce organizations.
Yeah, what you're chasing there, certainly when e-commerce started out, in general, people would turn to e-com because it probably was a better deal. You still see it to some degree in emerging markets. I think it speaks to more so probably a sophistication of the channel. But like you're saying, at some point it becomes a wild, wild west, and there's so many players out there that you're competing against. So it would be hard to match price.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's trend number one. Number two?
Number two is called Crowdsourced Creation. So this ties into that idea, that sort of battle between companies and consumers. And consumers have gotten more power over the years because of social media networks. And now, there's just so much data that companies have on us, and so much of a daily flow of information. If you think about social networks, for sure, like I'm wearing a Fitbit watch right now. So think about the information that, Google Fitbit has on me, just because of that. So just that volume of insight and AI comes into play because of what you can do with that mounds of data. But what we're hypothesizing is it's giving way to more of a co-creation process that's driving faster and more innovative product development. So some brands are really trying to harness that experience to bring consumers, moving even beyond influencers, but in consumers into the process. So, like one example, Nike has a Web 3.0 platform where users can co-create virtual product lines and earn royalties. There's another example. It's called Lalo. They're a baby brand, and they have a committee of users that give feedback on products and such that they're able to then bring into the development and innovation process.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about kind of the Fitbit. I've got an Apple Watch for reference, and we were talking the other day. Could we, bearing in mind there's lots of talk, as I'm sure you've seen, about the National Health Service in the UK and the pressure it's under and pay and all that kind of stuff. Would we get to a world in the future where almost your Fitbit, my Apple Watch, is predictive? So it sees a change in my heart rate, in my blood pressure, in my well-being, and that's the trigger to then ping my doctor to say, actually, these trends are out of the normal, are alarming. You may want to book an appointment with Simon, rather than me say I'm not feeling great past the event and book an appointment the other way.
Mm-hmm. Except, would you still have to wait 2 months?
Well, probably. But I think the general point is, back to your point on data, there'll be more and more creation of data. I think data's fine, isn't it? And lots of people are data-rich information or insight poor, so it's how that becomes a benefit for me to be comfortable with passing that data on, rather than just layering somebody else with much more data to say Simon's going to buy this in 3 weeks, or actually he's bought 3 red jumpers, so he's probably going to buy a red jumper next, or not a red jumper.
Yeah, it gets into a competing force. We talk about a lot, the privacy versus personalization, and what degree are consumers comfortable with giving up information, and what do they expect in return? And that actually takes us to the e-customization trend. Actually, we talk a lot about privacy in that because the basis of that trend is that brands are responding to that consumer desire for greater personalization by offering a broader range of customization across all types of goods and services sold online. And obviously, this enhanced personalization is made possible by AI and just data sharing. And so it's all about that exchange of information. And so I think, as you're talking about it in the health domain, I think there are certainly greater hurdles to overcome. And you do have, there's going to be differences by generations. There's going to be differences just culturally. Obviously, Germans and Japanese tend to be on one end of the spectrum in terms of not wanting to share information. So I'm sure they would have a harder line on something like that. But yeah, usually it's about, what do I get in exchange for it, and is that exchange reasonable?
And this number 3, so this kind of customization, as you call it, that I can't say. You mentioned when we were talking offline about the Starbucks app as well. So just talk to us about the kind of permutations that will blow people's mind of how many ways there are of building a coffee.
Yeah. So I think Starbucks is the gold standard in this, where, obviously they've had a very well-performing mobile app. I think they first launched it in 2010, and they started to bring these customization options into it. And essentially there's 170,000 ways that you could order a drink through their app. So that's the absolute extreme. But what is interesting is, that speaks to the possibility in food service. Other players are certainly tapping into that. But there's also potential in kind of the big ticket purchases as well. Samsung has what they call a bespoke design studio, which basically allows customers to order custom designed fridge freezers or other appliances where you can choose design elements on it, or I think even like upload photos and such too, when you have your refrigerator made or your oven or what have you.
Wow. I've seen some of that with, it's a bit somber, but with coffins where you can have paper coffins and you can get your kids to put pictures and they'll upload photos and stuff, which I think is really, really cool. I'm not sure I'd want to see my face on the fridge every time I looked at it, if I'm really
Yeah, that's a
honest.
commitment because that fridge is
Yeah.
going to be around for 15
Yeah.
years.
I'm
Yeah.
sure. I'm also sure its secondhand resale value would plummet as well if it had
Yes,
my
yeah,
face in it.
that's what
But
I was thinking too.
that's another one. But yeah, I mean, the Starbucks thing's great. But from my operational head goes on then, and I think to deal with that in a coffee shop, to have all those permutations needs a great layout. A great way of the order coming through to the barista, and then it being really efficient and on hand to be able to know, which syrup, which size, which blend, which temperature, whatever all those permutations are. So I think you can customize. You've also got to think operationally, if you're going to do that customization in bricks and mortar in the store, how that impacts the time it takes, which is clearly from the productivity angle of our side, but the benefit of it as well. So I'm sure there's some fancy algorithm that says out of those 170,000 combinations, there's probably a core of 50, which make up 95% of the orders. But showing you've got breadth clearly is something that appeals to people because it gives them choice. So that
Yeah, so Starbucks has been doing this for a bit. Like they started adding this customization in 2017, and they report that their sales have increased 400% off the
wow,
back of, largely driven by this, or they've pointed to that in earnings. So others are getting in on this, but Starbucks is kind of that leader out in front.
yeah, they do a good job. So that was number 3. Number 4 in terms of trends.
Yeah, we call it game changers. So this is the idea you tap into the power of rewards and competition. And brands are basically gamifying the e-commerce experience. And it's twofold, I would say. In some ways it helps to drive engagement, help those low conversion rates, but it's also about data collection as well. So this is the third time data has come up in conversation. But essentially, off the back of GDPR and other privacy regulations like that have come into play across the world, it's been harder for brands to get access to first party data. So this is an avenue for getting that type of information.
And is this the kind of thing, I think I had one today actually, which said, I can't remember which website it was from, so it clearly wasn't that effective. We haven't seen you in a while. Here's a 25% off voucher off your next purchase.
I would say it goes a little bit further. Like if it's a discount, it might be like a wheel is spinning and you play it to find out your discount, something like that. They're like, we've seen luxury brands that they try to create this engaging experience where, you're walking through, like, let's say the streets of Paris, or maybe it was in Spain, actually, I don't remember. But the point was you basically you unlock the new collection, that kind of idea.
Right.
You're going through this game to unlock it. So it might also tie to maybe educating around the brand as well. Like maybe it is about conveying a greater meaning. But it's things that consumers can, I would say, interact with, most likely to drive an experience.
So kind of login streaks. If you log in daily, you get bigger discount codes, or like you say, access to new collections or exclusive content.
Yeah, like that daily interaction you're talking about, because this trend started out of China, and Ant Financial was a big one where you log in daily and water a virtual tree. So to some degree, that concept is exporting now elsewhere. Shopee, which is out of Singapore, a big e-commerce marketplace, well, they actually have that water a virtual tree, and then basically you get Shopee coins, and then you're able to use that on other things. So yeah, it obviously driving engagement. Maybe it's reoccurring engagement based on what the experience is. Maybe it's around a moment like the Paris fashion show, for example. But yeah, trying to bring consumers in and to keep their attention.
Amazing. And fifth and final trend?
Yeah, this one we call sensory shopping. So this is all about that effort to try to create a more multi-sensory commerce experience to try to better mimic in-person shopping. So it's the idea of like, how can we move from the notion of the e-commerce experience just being about what you see or hear to also invoking those senses of touch, smell, and taste. So I know you're probably going to ask more about this experience and who's doing it, because it is the more far out there trend. Like I think the players driving it are very much more pioneers, and it tends to be either kind of big brands with pocketbooks to explore things or startups. So an example that I can give you, like L'Oreal has a fragrance that's called Victor and Rolf that has a digital perfume sample. So they basically had sounds on the website that were designed to invoke the sensation of smelling. It's the fragrance is called Spice Bomb, and it's by this Victor and Rolf brand. And then there's other examples of there's a company out of a beauty brand, a South Korean beauty company called Amor Pacific, that has a wearable chip wireless skin measuring device that basically takes feedback from your skin and shares this digital feedback. So obviously that gets into more of that tactile kind of experience. So you're seeing different things like that pop up.
I remember, I think the closest I've got to is years ago as a kid, they used to do scratch and sniff cards. So you used to scratch the card and as you watched telly, they linked it to programs you had to snap it. It never smelled anything like it was supposed to.
So now we're just trying to bring that into websites, basically. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, be really, I've got visions of sat there and things seeping through my monitor screen or speakers and all various smells around. But yeah, and they say, don't you, with lots of things we eat with our eyes and our nose before we kind of see it. So you can see certainly from a perfume point of view, from a food point of view, how that would be a bit of a game changer, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Interesting, fascinating. So yeah, brilliant summary of the 5 trends. So really appreciate that. As I said, we will post the link to the 2023 Digital Shopper Trends webinar, which goes through those 5 trends and more for people to review in their own time. If people want to reach out to you, Michelle, where's the best place for them to find you?
I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. So if you were to search Michelle Evans Euromonitor, you'll probably find me.
Brilliant. We'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile so people can get there easily. So final question from me before we finish today's recording. What's the best bit of business advice you've ever been given?
Wow.
It's a tricky one on the spot, right?
Yeah. I think something that I think about a lot is the nuance of data. Obviously, you can use data in a lot of different ways to tell stories, and often the story is is probably as you peel back the onions, peel back the layer of the onion, right?
Yep. No, I like that. That's a good one. So really, really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. Love talking through those 5 trends. Look after yourself and we'll catch up soon.
Okay. Thank you very much for the invite.